doing it. It's weird. Is your monitor off? Monitor is on. All right, we'll try that. I think it's gone, or mostly gone. Sounds like RF interference. Right, but there's nothing around me. All right, good. It's gone. Yes? Gone? Okay. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. All right, well, anyways, I want to welcome you all to the show. I really appreciate you guys being here, bearing with me as I try to work through that. So, I think what we'll do is, in today's show, I'm gonna take a look at what's going on with the Spectrum auction. We actually have a break in the action. The action resumes in a couple of weeks as we get through the holiday season. Yeah, I got it, Caleb. It's off. We're good. Anyways, I usually do say my hellos to everybody, but we're pretty far behind. So appreciate everybody who's here. Hashtag Mod Squad. Those of you that have a big blue wrench holding it down for me, appreciate you very much. The mod list has expanded, and we're happy, very happy to report that. So welcome to all my moderators that are new. I did knight Tony today, so hashtag Mod Squad and welcome him. Also, I know we got some new patron members. I want to welcome Dan. Welcome to you, sir. Actually, since Lavendi is indeed the homie, we will knight Lavendi as well. So we've recently knighted Dan. We have knighted now Lavendi, and we have knighted Tony. By the way, all members of the Patreon. So big shout out to the SMT Patreon members. Thank you for supporting productions there. Thank you to all my mods. Thank you to all the viewers out there. Thank you so much for watching and supporting, sharing videos, liking them, rating them, stuff like that. And big shout out to anybody who has offered recent donations. We thank you very much for that as well. You guys are awesome. Thank you. All right, so a couple of things that I want to take a look at today is I want to look into the crystal ball a little bit. And what I mean by that is I want to look at a couple of situations where, what's going to come of this whole C-band thing and how much money they spend. Right, so I'll go through everything that we know today. I'll talk about, all of the items, in terms of how much money was generated, how much per license, or how much, I should kind of rephrase that, how much per block of spectrum. I mean, these are huge astronomical amounts of money. I know that the carriers have a lot of money, and I know that's great. But the truth of the matter is that there's some risk in all of this. There's a lot of money being spent here. It's pretty incredible. I will offer my predictions as to who I think has spent the most, where I rank them, how much they spent, what it means for their customers and their network as well. So I'm going to cover that all in today's show. All right, and one last thing for me to check. Oh, sure, I could turn up the mic, absolutely. 1 second. I must have bumped it down or something. I do apologize for that. I was looking at my monitor, and it did look a little bit low. We should be good now. We definitely should be good. I don't think I'm peaking or anything. I think we're okay. All right. All right, so for those of you that like the show and, you like the video part, and that's fine. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with people liking the video part. But if you do like the audio-only version of this, we do have that in the podcast. There are links in the description box for that. So I will be recording these types of things and putting them there. In my opinion, something happens to YouTube compression, and I don't know. The sound quality seems to I don't know. I just don't like it as much. It just doesn't sound as good. But when I do record on Anchor, it seems to be really nice. So if you're into that sort of thing, I will be recording it for there as well. Let's go ahead and get this thing started, man. Again, welcome to all. Glad you guys could be here. Lavendi Opa. Love the new modified name there. Yeah, YouTube is more compressed. Totally agree. All right, so to get things started in today's show, I do want to kind of preface this by saying, if you're listening or watching this and this is the first time you've ever heard of Spectrum Auction 107, I'm going to give you all the details. I'm going to give you everything that you need to know about this auction. All the actual factuals, as well as a little bit of prediction. You know, kind of my guesses as to where I think things are from each of the carriers. So I'll do that for you here today. All right, so the first thing we'll start with is just a little bit about the auction itself. Spectrum Auction 107 is considered to be the granddaddy of them all. I say that because they're calling this spectrum Goldilocks 5G spectrum. I've never really heard that term thrown around before in relation to spectrum, right? We're talking about wireless frequencies. We've seen, T-Mobile make a huge deal to acquire Sprint. I know they call it a merger, but it's really not. That was totally an acquisition. So they spent a lot of money in their merger, $26 billion for, the Sprint assets, the Sprint customers, the 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. That's really the focus of what they'll be doing with their network moving forward. And this is going to be essentially the same sort of thing for the other carriers as well, like Verizon and AT&T. Let's throw Dish in there. We'll throw T-Mobile in there too. They're going to definitely get some as well. So the Spectrum Auction 107, 280 megahertz of this stuff, 3.7 gigahertz frequency. So this is good old mid-band. The Spectrum Auction began on December 8th. It is currently December 23rd. So all the numbers that I'll be speaking out is relative to that window of auction. 45 rounds are in the books as of right now. And bidding will kind of take recess, I think, until January 4th, where it resumes at 10 a.m., and we'll have rounds 46 through 50 at that time. In terms of the value, as of right now, the price of the spectrum has worked out to 81 cents per megahertz pop. Gross proceeds have apparently hit $70 billion, which is a lot of money. So, I don't know how you really slice it any other way. How do you quantify it as anything other than a crap ton of money? I've been tracking this for the last several days. I've been tracking this for a couple of weeks. I did a prediction video, I think either December 5th or 6th. So I laid out all my predictions, what I thought this Spectrum auction was going to be, how much money it was going to generate, and so on. And all of those predictions that I made have all been wrong. One of the predictions I made was that it was going to be like around $50 billion. I thought 45 on the low end and 50 on the high end. And it's already over 70 billion. So I was off. Pretty much everybody was off. So I don't feel bad, for example, that I was wrong, because everybody's been wrong. Nobody really called this. Anyways, according to the FCC public reporting system, these are all the facts that we know right now based on the rounds remaining. We have 76 total rounds of bidding. 26 rounds remain. So we've got, what do we have? No, we've got more than that. We're at 50. Oh, no, we got to get to 46 on the 4th. So got like 30 rounds remaining. All right. January 4th, it'll resume. I think give it about that week, and I think all the licenses are successfully auctioned. So it should be completed probably like January 8th. It'll finish. As of right now, the demand is still pretty high. The demand was extremely high before, these last few days and moving back towards last week. It's been absolutely insane. But we should have results like pretty quick. I would say probably third week of January, we should know how much money was generated, who bought what, how much they got, where they got it, that sort of thing. So super excited to get those results and see what happens. Anyways, I will definitely follow up on that. We'll definitely be doing a live stream and a podcast for it. The $70 billion that was generated in the bidding actually does not include clearing cost, which is important to note because the clearing and relocation costs are a fee that's on top of the bidding. And it's a fee, for those of you that don't know, that must be paid to the satellite operators who have been using the spectrum for a while. So what they have to do is they actually have to decom and repack it so that wireless providers can use it. So to accelerate that decom and relocation and clearance, they have to pay. And that's valued at $13.2 billion just for Block A, which Spectrum Auction 107 has Block A, Block B, and Block C. So there's going to be more of these clearing costs associated with these spectrum licenses. So whoever successfully bids on this stuff is going to have to pay their piece of the clearing and relocation fees. So just Block A alone is $13 billion. I'm guessing that Blocks B and C will be similar to that, maybe a little bit less. I don't know. But maybe if the wireless operators could, have the satellite operators accelerate that relocation, maybe they pay more and they take it down sooner, We'll see. Anyways, combined total, you got the over 70 billion plus the over 13 billion. It's estimated between 83 and 84 billion dollars as of right now. Thus far. Now when you do the math on that, that's 0.98 cents per megahertz pop. So I want to give you guys some perspective. What does that value mean? 0.98 per megahertz pop. In comparison, the CBRS auction that finished in the summer had a per megahertz pop value of 0.22. That means that C-band is generating 5 times the price per megahertz pop. That's a huge difference. There's a lot of discrepancy there. So clearly they feel a lot better about C-band than they do CBRS. And I have my own thoughts on CBRS and what's going on there. A little bit more perspective. I did a little bit of research, some reading. I went digging around for some comparable spectrum auctions and pricing, for when companies bought spectrum. The 2.5 gigahertz that T-Mobile currently has was originally bought by Sprint from Clearwire a number of years ago. This dates back a long time. It was purchased at a value of 0.30 megahertz pop. Globally, mid-band of this variety is selling between the ranges of 0.20 and 0.40 per megahertz pop. So this basically tells us that the U.S. wireless carriers, probably mostly Verizon and AT&T, right? They're probably the ones spending the big bucks. They're killing each other for the spectrum. There's several things that I think this tells us. Since they're willing to pay so much for the spectrum, it really tells you what they think about it. You know what, Dan? I will talk about that. I will definitely mention this. Now, why has the value in these bids, why has it been so high on this front end of the license? And I have my thoughts on this. The first thing is, we're talking about A block spectrum. This is important because these are licenses that are in the markets of critical importance. We're talking about, the big cities, right? Where a lot of people live, where this spectrum is going to offer the capacity for the future of these networks. 46 of the top 50 partial economic areas, PEAs, are included in the Block A spectrum block of this auction. They generated by themselves $21.6 billion in bidding. That's 1.22 per megahertz pop. So far, even if you include the clearing cost, which is 0.98, the Block A generated a 1.22 per megahertz pop rate. So it's higher than that, right? So That's really the important one, the one that's driving up all the cost. What's up, Silva? Good to see you, man. In terms of the pricing with the fees that are, needed for the clearing and the relocation, Block A in those 46 of the top 50 PEAs is $27 billion when you include the clearing cost. That drives the per megahertz pop to 1.57. So let's kind of wrap our minds around this value, okay? In Europe and Asia and other continents and countries, their price range is 0.2 to 0.4 per megahertz pop. Our carriers are looking at 1.6 per megahertz pop. So we're literally talking about 4 or 5 times more in paying for it, right? That's way more. I don't even know how to really, look at this in a good way. To me, it just shows you how important it is to what they want to do in leveraging their networks moving forward. In terms of the top 25 markets, so let's take it even one step further. We just talked about the top 50. Let's go into the top 25, a more elite group of markets where there are massive amounts of people. All right, we're talking about, the capital cities of all the states. That's what we're really talking about in the big markets. Okay? Top 25 markets have generated $50 billion of the $70 billion generated thus far, pricing it at 1.14 per megahertz pop. New York City, $7.2 billion by itself. That prices it at 1.02 per megahertz pop. Los Angeles, $6 billion generated, 1.13 per megahertz pop. San Francisco, $2.9 billion, which works out to 1.15 per megahertz pop. So New York City, LA, and San Francisco combine for $16 billion in proceeds. Y'all do the math for me. As a percentage, $16 billion out of the $70 billion in 3 cities. LTE interference. There's no phones around me. There's no phones. How do you hear it? I don't understand. There. I just put my beanie over. There shouldn't be any. I don't know. I don't know. It should be okay. All right, so yeah, man, this is a lot of money. And those big cities are generating big money. All right. I'm looking at some other things, some other breakdowns. Dan, you were asking about the AWS auction of 2015. Dan, that is a tremendous thing to ask, bro, because I got the numbers for you. And I think you're going to be surprised by some of these numbers. The reason I wanted to bring up the comparison to the AWS from 2015 is because that auction only generated $45 billion. But the thing about that is it was only auctioning 65 megahertz. This spectrum auction is going to bring 280 megahertz to the table, right? So we're talking about what, 4 or 5 times more. All right. So when I crunched the numbers, and I was looking at that spectrum at the time, it was really important, right? The midband was huge. All right. So when I look at the numbers, that 65 megahertz of spectrum from 2015 that generated 45 billion, AWS is 1.7 to 2.1 gigahertz. There was 50 megahertz that was paired spectrum. 15 megahertz was uplink, and then they were sold and auctioned in 10 megahertz blocks. Anyways, at that time in 2015, analysts predicted that the AWS spectrum was going to generate 10 to 20 billion. It generated 45. Some analysts were predicting that this auction, Spectrum Auction 107, was going to generate 25 to 30. They're wrong. Analysts continue to be wrong over and over and over again when it comes to Spectrum. And the reason is because the carriers are coming in feeling the urgency and the need to spend more, doing whatever it takes to secure the future of their wireless networking. So some other breakdowns here. AWS in 2006 generated 13.7 billion. 700 megahertz in 2008 generated 19 billion. I want to give you guys some perspective. Spectrum makes a lot of money. It generates huge value. So I've been, that's why I'm not surprised that this is happening. If the most recent mid-band auction generated 45 billion, low band is generating 15 to 20 billion. Why shouldn't 280 megahertz of Goldilocks spectrum generate, $100 billion or so or whatever? Anyways, a little bit of breakdown from the AWS from 2015. AT&T spent $18 billion. Verizon spent $10.4 billion. Dish spent $10 billion. T-Mobile spent $1.7 billion. When you crunch the numbers, AT&T was spending 2.88 per megahertz pop. Verizon 2.92 per megahertz pop. Dish 1.68 per megahertz pop. And then T-Mobile 1.63 per megahertz pop. This auction in 2015 had massive demand, but had limited licenses. This spectrum auction has much more spectrum to bid on, I should say, to auction. So it's priced a little bit different. So per megahertz pop, the 2015 AWS auction had a higher rate, but it didn't generate the money because it didn't have that amount of spectrum. 65 megahertz compared to 280. So it's simply just a numbers thing. Anyways, C-band has many more spectrum blocks. They're also larger. AWS was 10 megahertz subblocks. These are 20 megahertz subblocks. All right. Anyways, spectrum auction from 2015, it generated 45 billion. We passed that many days ago with C-band. So anyways, I wanted to pose a couple of questions, and I'm going to do those at this time because I think it's important to look into the crystal ball. All right, now before I give you guys my questions and how I think things are going to play out, this is completely opinion. None or all of these things could or may not happen. I'm letting you know these are predictions. This is just me thinking aloud. I'm taking all that I know so far about C-band and the way that it's auctioned thus far. Look, I don't know all the details. There's so many things I'd love to know that I don't know and I can't know. Right? This is a quiet time. Nobody could talk about these things. Anybody who's in there, anybody who's in on these auctions is lucky to see what's going on. But hey, what's up, Nikki? Good to see you, man. But look, everything I'm about to say, because everybody's going to say, Sneed was wrong and all this. Okay, fine. I'm okay being wrong, but I'm going out on a limb, and I'm going to ask some questions first, and then I'm going to give you guys how I think it's going to play out. All right, so don't throw spears at me. Don't come back and say, oh, Sneed was wrong, man. I'm throwing it out there. These are discussion points. I could be wrong about everything. I could be right about everything, but most likely it's going to be mixed. I'm trying to use my best judgment and interpretation of what's been going on with the spectrum auction, right? But just, like I said, don't judge me. I'm just trying to make it fun. I'm trying to make it interesting. We're going to synthesize everything that we know about it and try to pose some questions that could affect you as a consumer coming out of this auction. All right, so question number 1. What does this do to our service bills in the future, whether it's the near term or the long term? The first question I want to know is this spectrum auction specifically going to create increases in our bills? And by bills, I'm talking about our wireless bills. So if you are a T-Mobile customer, if you are an AT&T customer of Verizon, a Dish customer, does this spectrum auction, with the billions that it's been generating, does it impact our bill? In my opinion, maybe not right away, because carriers wouldn't be so stupid to do that. But as it is deployed, and as they are able to leverage new revenue streams, and they've created this new layer of capacity, they could sell their home internet more readily, right? Wherever they deploy the C-band, they now have that throughput and that capacity with this new added bandwidth and so on. I think it's very likely that smartphone service, one way or the other, I don't know how they're going to do it. It's hard to predict that part, like what features or whatever. I don't know. But I do think on average, most people's smartphone bills stand a chance to possibly increase. Because if we're at $70 billion today, right, and the spectrum auction, resumes on January 4th, there's going to be more billions spent. I don't think we're done at $70 billion. It's not, no way, right? We're going to 80, 90, I think $100 billion is very realistic. Even though they say that the demand has decreased, I mean, it doesn't mean, with those last 30 rounds or so that we won't see, I don't know, January 11th or whatever day it might finish. We see it, peak over $100 billion. The carriers are going to push that cost onto their customers. They're not in this business for free. They're in this business to make money. So if they're spending money to give you a good quality network, high capacity, you can do all the different things you want to do with the service, you're going to have to pay for it. So unfortunately, I think it's a foregone conclusion. At some point, our bills are going to increase. So in my opinion, I think that is very likely. I think eventually, even if it's not in the near term, I think in the long term, maybe a few years down the road, we're going to see prices increase. I really do believe that. And I said this at the time of the T-Mobile and Sprint merger. I knew for a fact that the T-Mobile and Sprint merger was not going to increase pricing immediately. It just wasn't. Down the road, it could. And I knew that 5G in its non-standalone form was not going to increase pricing. But I knew that standalone could, because they were going to start dedicating new hardware, right? All the upgrades that are happening on the tower sites, the base stations, the radios, the antennas, the tower sites, the nodes, buying new spectrum, deploying it, transmitting it, backhaul upgrades, fiber optics, the labor involved in installing all of this, the maintenance, the repairs, the upgrades, it all adds up. Prices are going to go up. I really do believe that. Within a few years, we'll see it. The next question I'll pose, and I'll give you kind of my take on it, is how much has each carrier spent on this auction? And where do I think they're going to end up at? So thus far, we've had $70 billion in gross proceeds. I personally believe Verizon is responsible for most of that. I think Verizon has found a way to secure their future in mid-band. I think Verizon has spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $35 billion. I think they've spent about half of the money. All right, that's just my guess. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe they spent 20, maybe they spent 30. I think they're around 35 billion. And I think they're going to end up around 40 billion. I think at 45 billion it starts to get a little bit outrageous. But I think legitimately 35 to 40 billion is very possible for Verizon. In terms of AT&T, I think AT&T is likely right now around the 10 to 15 billion mark. I lean more towards the 15 billion mark, though. Could they end up at 20 billion? Very possible. And I know a lot of people were talking about AT&T and their current problems with their debt. That is a real concern. But you have to remember, wireless is AT&T's bread and butter. They win in wireless. They haven't really won with media. Not yet. And who knows how long it's going to take for them to win in media. You get what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know when they get that back. But the thing is if you look at the Time Warner deal as a setback, and you look at DirecTV as a setback, which they are. AT&T accrued $180 billion in debt through all of this. $67 billion in debt from DirecTV. I think over $100 billion in debt from Time Warner or something, somewhere around that. You can't leverage your future on your past failures. Just because things didn't work out before doesn't mean you just mail it in and give up. If you think AT&T shouldn't spend money on C-band because they messed up with DirecTV and Time Warner, then you might as well just go and file for bankruptcy if you're AT&T. If you're not going to spend on your wireless is your bread and butter. Do not turn your back on wireless, which I don't think they are. I think the only thing that AT&T has had to do is actively approach the investors and say, look, we're going to be putting a lot of money into the C-band. We have no options. Wireless is how we win, and this is the way for us to win in wireless. It's through C-band. So in my opinion, I think Verizon, $35 billion, AT&T, $15 billion. All right, so that puts us at about 50. So there's $20 billion remaining. Let's go ahead and give T-Mobile about $4 billion. I think they're responsible for about that much. All right, just because T-Mobile has a lot of 2.5 gigahertz does not mean that they don't want to supplement their network with some C-band. They 100% must. In fact, there are places across the country where T-Mobile either lacks any 2.5 gigahertz or they have very little of it. So it's kind of like disjointed a little bit. They can address that with C-band. And C-band is a much cleaner radio frequency. Come on, it's just the way that it propagates and it behaves. There's no interference in C-band. 2.5 gigahertz has its trouble at times where you'll have to turn down power and it'll be kind of giving RF engineers a little bit of difficulty. They'll have to work around some things. C-band doesn't have that associated issue. So they'd be smart to get in on some of that. I think right now T-Mobile's probably somewhere around $4 billion right now. I think Dish is around there too. I think Dish is somewhere around the $5 billion mark. They have to get involved here. If they're going to be a real wireless carrier, Dish is going to need more spectrum, especially when you start thinking about them serving more customers. They have a lot of AWS-4, which is nice. They have some low band too. But if we're looking into the future and the future usage of customers and them needing more and more spectrum for capacity, you're going to have to get some. I would guess that Dish is going to get 20 megahertz in certain places, 40 megahertz in other places. I think the same thing about T-Mobile as well. Some places 20, some places 40. But I don't really think beyond that. Meanwhile, I think AT&T is going to be pushing that 60 to 100 megahertz in a lot of places. And I think Verizon, same thing. They'll get 60 in some places, 80 in others, and I think 100 in others. I really do believe that. There are going to be certain markets in the U.S. where Verizon and AT&T will be deploying 60 to 100 megahertz channels of C-band. It's a foregone conclusion. We know the direction of the capacity needs of Americans. It's going to increase over time. Plus, carriers want to do wireless home internet. Plus, carriers want to offer all these new great capacitive-based applications, new revenue streams, new business models. Verizon's doing a lot with enterprise. AT&T is doing a lot with government contracts. T-Mobile wants to do TV, and they want to do home internet as well. You're going to need capacity to do that. Nikki, you might be onto something. In a case like New York City for Verizon, that kind of being their home area, their home turf, as you called it. That could be a place where they would do a 100 megahertz channel or more. Who knows? I know from the A block, they likely got a nice sized chunk. They might supplement it with more through B and C block. We'll have to wait and see. Comcast and Charter. So we're talking about like Spectrum and Xfinity Mobile. I hear they're getting involved. I don't know how much credence I put to that. I know they're getting involved, but I don't think they're getting involved in a big way. Let's call it a couple of billion for now. So that probably puts us at 60 some odd billion. Give or take a couple of billion here, a couple of billion there. Like I said, I feel Verizon's around 35, possibly upwards of 40 billion maybe. That's probably where they end up at, I think. AT&T, I think they're at around 15. They probably end up at 20. T-Mobile, I think, ends up closer to like 8 billion, maybe 10. Some people are saying they could be upwards of 12 to 15 billion. I think that's unlikely, but we'll see. Dish, I think, ends up around 10 billion as well. I think they do. U.S. Cellular, throw them in for a couple of billion. Comcast, Charter, and them, let's put them at like 6 to 8 billion. 10 billion would be crazy high. We'll see. Next question is, how soon will we be connecting to C-band? When will we see it on our phones? When will we be using it as a service? And when can carriers start to deploy it? All right, that's a wild card. That is an extreme wild card. For those of you thinking that if C-band finishes auctioning in January, what does that mean for the future of when we're actually going to get it connected? Like, when are we going to have it deploying on Verizon? When is AT&T going to deploy it? These types of things. Those are good questions. We want it sooner than later. In fact, we want it ASAP. And there's a couple of things that are going to prevent it from getting deployed quickly. I'll explain what those things are, because they're really, it's just process. It's just semantics. They're technicalities. It's the way that things are done on wireless telecom. It's not that the carriers don't know how to deploy it. It's that there's systematic things that they have to accomplish and do first before they can actually broadcast it commercially to their wireless customers and consumers. So in addressing whether or not, we'll see it soon or when is a time frame when we can expect C-band, we are expecting that it will be deployed over N77. I know some people have said like N78. Look, we'll get the details on that very soon. But in terms of what has to happen before we can connect to it and when carriers deploy it, number one, it's got to be cleared. It must be relocated by satellite TV operators. Once that's completed, carriers have to do testing, and they have to convince the powers that be, the authorities, the FCC, and so on, that it's broadcasting well. There's no issues. There's no interference being caused with other, channels and bands and stuff like that. So some of those technical aspects of, network testing. But once those couple of things are done, they're good. Now you can, on a grand scale, start upgrading all of the tower sites that you want to deploy from, all the base stations, all the antennas, any type of modifications you have to do to tower sites to, accommodate for the space required for all the hardware. If there needs, if you want to do fiber backhaul upgrades and stuff like that, all that can be done in that time. A lot of people are saying that December is a good time frame to expect it to start to deploy. I'd say that's a fair assessment. I think December of 2021 is fair. There are some people that are speculating that it could actually be pushed up, meaning pushed back. Like back closer to us now, like possibly seeing it in the end of the summer or sometime in Q3. That would be amazing. I would love to be able to connect to C-band in like September or October. That would be so cool, right? The sooner the better, right? But I think for most companies, for most carriers, and for most customers, we'll start seeing it in the wild, people connecting to it on their handhelds sometime in December. And then like the following year, Q1 of 2022, full throttle deployment. Verizon will be going crazy in deployment and upgrades. AT&T will be going crazy. T-Mobile will be launching theirs. They'll be doing that with the 2.5 gigahertz. It'll be tremendous. It'll be awesome. So my expectation, again, end of 2021, early 2022, many markets will start to get it. I know Verizon will aggressively be deploying it. They are absolutely spectrum starved. A lot of their markets are currently being stressed. There's a lot of strain. Safe to say Verizon has the most impressive tower grid. They have a lot of tower sites, which means there's a lot of sites to upgrade, but it's going to boost their network performance tremendously. When Verizon launches their N77 connection for C-band, it's going to be felt. And I really, really hope that people understand how bad Verizon needs this. As great as their network is, as impressive as their tower grid is, C-band is going to change the Verizon network experience. If you thought like ultra wideband was great because of that throughput and all that it is, but it has its limitations in propagating indoors. They're taking the show indoors. That's how difficult, millimeter wave is. So imagine a 100 megahertz channel of C-band broadcasting, right? We're talking about gigabit speed on midband. Absolutely tremendous. So excited. AT&T will do this too. T-Mobile with the 2.5, now with the 3.7. It should be really nice. They'll be aggregating carriers. The phones next year that have the Qualcomm Snapdragon X60 modem are going to combine multiple 5G connections. So not only will you connect to C-band, but you're also going to be connecting to 2.5 gigahertz if you're on T-Mobile. Not only are you going to be connecting to ultra-wideband on Verizon, but you also get the C-band with it. Inter 5G carrier aggregation. It's going to be great. You might be broadcasting 400 or 500 megahertz to somebody's phone. So even in the most congested scenario, where you're at a concert or you're at an NBA basketball game or an NFL stadium, if you are connected to those connections, you're not going to lose connection at all. You're going to stay connected to the network. You're going to upload your Snapchat. You're going to launch your FaceTime. You're going to make your calls, your texts, run your video, watch your YouTube video at a timeout, whatever. You could do it all. The capacity is going to be there. The ultra wideband and all this new midband is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be absolutely tremendous. Hashtag tremendous. So I'm super psyched about that. Now let's talk a little bit about use cases. I think this is important. What is C-band going to be used for? In my opinion, the focus of C-band is going to be supporting the consumer wireless network. So people like you and me using our smartphones on Verizon and AT&T and T-Mobile and Dish when they launch, right? And US Cellular when they get some of this and, and all these companies. It's really about supporting the capacity of our usage. So for those of you doing Zoom calls, for those of you that are uploading video and creating video content on YouTube like myself, live streaming, all of that is going to be enhanced because of this. Along with the ultra wideband, there's all sorts of new capacity coming to consumer wireless networking. I will tell you, though, it's not just consumer mobility that this is going to be boosting. Verizon has launched a pilot for home internet. So has T-Mobile. AT&T will likely do this as well. They're all going to be doing home internet, and they're all going to be doing all of this, through all their different, types of their network. So all the mid-band, the millimeter wave, the whole shebang. In my opinion, I think Verizon and T-Mobile could really leverage their home internet better if they grand scale deploy the C-band, and in the case of T-Mobile through their 2.5 gigahertz also. But Verizon can really scale their home wireless, the fixed wireless home 5G. So how fast does it need to be? 100 megabits per second, 150, 200, that would be great, right? You don't really need much more for home internet. If somebody needs more than that, they're probably looking at fiber options. Or if somebody's lucky enough to have Verizon's millimeter wave ultra wideband 5G services, that would be great. Here's what I think is going to happen for consumers, though. So leave the home internet out of the way. Let's just talk about consumer wireless. What I think is going to be happening based on this spending, we're at $70 billion. It's going to go above $100 billion probably. I think we're going to see a whole new feature set overhaul at T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T, and Dish, and everybody else. I think we're going to see the official removal of video resolution deprioritization. So what do I mean? With this added capacity, we can remove the 480p video resolution cap, the 720p video resolution cap. I think 1080p becomes a standard through C-band. Maybe they don't go unlimited, right? Maybe they don't give you crazy unlimited bandwidth for video. Maybe. Okay? But I do feel like 1080p becomes the new standard. Whether it's Verizon or, T-Mobile, whatever the case may be, we're going 1080p across the board. A lot of people would like to see it completely removed. Like, whatever your bandwidth, you have and whatever speeds you get, just use it for video. AT&T does that, and it's pretty amazing. But, yeah, I think the video resolution thing is going to be a thing of the past. Nobody should be having 480p video resolution cap when your phone does 1080p or higher. Just my opinion. I know some people say they don't care. I do. All right. Another thing that I think is going to change, grand scale, is hotspot allowances are about to increase in a big way. Because of the added capacity, I think a lot of the postpaid wireless plans are going to move to 100 gigs of hotspot tethering data as a bare minimum. And then people can connect pretty much everything they have while they're on the go. So if you have an iPad, if you have some other form of tablet, if you have a laptop, if you want to connect other types of mobile devices that don't have a SIM card in them, Chromebooks, MacBooks, whatever. I think a lot of that hotspot stuff is going to be increasing. No, 144p is not enough. No. Yes, GV, that's right. 1080p as a standard, I think, is a bare minimum. Quad HD would be cool, but 4K would be even better. We'll see. But yeah, I think the hotspot's going to kick up too. The last question I want to address is, does prepaid benefit? Does the MVNO market, the MVNO customer benefit? The answer there is yes. One of the things that you've probably noticed if you've tried a prepaid carrier like Visible or Cricket or Metro, or if you've had an MVNO like TracFone or H2O Wireless or any of these other, Mint Mobile, all these MVNOs, they're always these stripped down version of the postpaid offers that the carriers provide, the big MNOs. All right, so like T-Mobile with Mint, or like Visible for Verizon, or Cricket for AT&T, and any of those other MVNOs. They're always these stripped down, bare bones offers from, these mobile network operators. And for some people, it's cool. They're like, yeah, I'll sacrifice some of the hotspot stuff. I'll sacrifice, going to a store. I'll just do it online with Visible, whatever. I think more capacity will be afforded to the prepaid and the MVNO customer. I think more hotspot will be afforded to them. I think improved QCI management, where they are on like the network core and stuff like that, in terms of the quality control of their connection. I think a lot of that becomes more intelligent and dynamic, and I think people's experiences will improve. I think hotspot plans get better too, like the mobile hotspot, the traditional like Inseego, MiFi devices, those types of things. I think those get better as well. At the same time, you guys got to keep in mind, we got Starlink coming as a new competitor too. So it's a good time for wireless and home internet and all these things. I'm so excited about C-band. I can't wait. I can't wait for all of it to finish auctioning so we could find out who got what, how much they spent, and how much our bills are going to go up. Like I said, down the line, everyone, I think our bills are going to increase. You can't spend $100 billion on one spectrum auction and not expect the carriers to increase pricing. I said this a year ago. I said if the T-Mobile and Sprint merger gets approved, pricing will not increase from the merger. Pricing is going to increase from 5G. An entire new protocol of hardware with an entire new investment on 5G. Europe by itself, 5G is going to be a $1.10 trillion investment in the network. That's just Europe. Who knows what Asia is? Who knows what the U.S. is? I'll have to look at the numbers. But every continent is going to be spending huge money on 5G. It's going to be a huge booming business. Samsung's now getting involved. Nokia's not doing too great. Ericsson is capitalizing up on the opportunity. If you're investing in anything, if you're an investor and you're looking to make some wise investments to make some money, invest in all things 5G. invest in companies in 5G, invest in vendors of 5G, invest in all the different services and the enterprise involved in 5G. It's the future of networking, and I think in 2021 we're going to see a huge seismic shift. 5G will actually feel like something. You know what I'm saying? That pretty much wraps up this part of the show. Thank you all for listening on the audio-only version, and we'll catch you on the next recording. As for the YouTube side, I'm with you guys. Nikki says, who will show up the auction late in 2021? There's another 100 megahertz. Carriers may be broke. Nikki, I have a prediction. And again, I could be wrong, but this is my prediction. I think the reason that C-band is generating so much money is because CBRS is not going high power. We really did assume that C-band was going to go high power. And we had a lot of reason to believe that. But based on this spending, I think CBRS is staying low power, which Verizon is probably pissed about because they just spent $4 billion on CBRS, and they probably regret it. Technoid, I don't think Verizon's charging $20. They're charging $10 for ultra wideband if you have an old unlimited plan. It's included in most of the new unlimited plans. I think with the exception of the Start Unlimited. I think it's a $10 add-on. By the way, the $10 add-on for ultra wideband also includes HD video add-on. So actually, that's what I do. I bought I have a 2017 new Verizon Unlimited plan. I got the ultra wideband add-on. It also gave me the HD video add-on. So I'm actually okay with it. I'm good. I still save a lot of money on the plan itself. My average line on my plan's like $30. You know, so I'm grandfathered in at a pretty good price. So I got to pay the add-on, which I'm okay, man. $10, whatever. Yeah, Nikki, I really do feel like the CBRS is... Well, they're actually saying that CBRS is going to mess with... I don't know if it's weather or if it's armed services spectrum that it could interfere with. I forgot what it is, but I'm guessing that the carriers know that CBRS is not going high power, and that's why they're so in on CBRS. Oh, a mile for CBRS would be tremendous. That would be great. Oh, by the way, Nikki, I'm going to be testing some CBRS either tomorrow or in the next couple of days. I found a couple of small cells that are pushing some CBRS. I will be testing it, and I will tag you on Twitter so you can catch me streaming it live. I know you'd be into that. But I did find a site, and it's not even far from my house. Anyways, I don't know if I had any super chats or not because I don't know if it tracked it. Crap, I don't know. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I have no idea. Streamlabs is kind of weird. I don't know, moderators, if you could tell me if I did. I hope I didn't. I've been trying to watch it, but we shall see. I'm looking through it. Sneed does all the spending on the auction. Heard the spending they're going to be using for deployment. What do you mean? The spending, you mean? The spending on deployment's not going to be that bad. I think it's just the spectrum's the expensive stuff. It's good stuff on macros. Yeah. As long as it's high, it can reach pretty far. I think they like it lower because it gets to be a little bit more directional. Being that it's not high power kind of sucks, man. It really does. I really hope it does go high power. Anyways, we'll talk more about CBRS later. That's my thoughts currently on what's going on with the C-band. If you're watching this on replay, go ahead and give me a comment in the comment section of what you think about all the news that we have and all of the things happening with C-band thus far. You know, tell me what you think. If you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm right, if it's somewhere in between, whatever. If you think my predictions are good, or do you think they're wrong, or I'm way off, whatever, let me know. Anyways, let's go ahead and wrap things up, shall we? Yeah. Thank you guys for being here. Do me a solid. If it's your first time here, hit the subscribe button, activate the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload from the SMT. Yes, hit that like button. Now, do it. Woohoo! Next, check out some of the links in the description box. We have the Twitter handle at SneedTech. We have the Patreon page if you want to become a member. With a small donation, you can become a member of a community within a community, like-minded people that love network technology. Basically, you take your SMT YouTube channel experience to the next level. More live streams, they're exclusive, more video content, vlogs, stuff like that. It's great. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Hashtag Mod Squad, hashtag 2LiveCrew if you watch this in the live, hashtag Replay Crew if you watch it on DVR, hashtag Ravioli Gang if you watch this while you're eating dinner or you're hungry. And yeah, hashtag Mod Squad, all my moderators holding it down for me. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for being here to watch. I hope to see you soon on the next show, and we'll catch you later. Peace. Oh, and definitely, a happy holiday season to all. I wish you all a great new year. 2021 will indeed be better than 2020. You guys are the best. Y'all take it easy. Yeah.